Hey, it's the beginner locksmith, and one of my viewers asked me to go over what are the startup costs for a business like this. And I'm gonna tell you what from my experience, and all that, but take everything with a grain of salt. There's not advice. I mean, I guess it is advice, but I'm not saying you should take it seriously because I'm a beginner. I call myself the beginner locksmith. Keep that in mind. And I think I know the fundamentals okay, and I've been trying to learn. But first, before I go into that, like, what kind of training do you have, right? Like, I feel like you should have some sort of training and at least the fundamentals, like identify key types and things like that, right? So I feel like there's like maybe like four categories, right? The first is like, I'm not in this category, right? Like a pro that, like, he apprenticed under a good locksmith business that was flourishing. The locksmith knew what he was doing, that he learned under, and that's probably the best category, right? 2 to 3 year apprenticeship is what I hear. I'm not in this category, but that's probably the best. Like, you can't beat that in terms of training, right? And then there's the second category, which I would categorize myself is I went to the California Institute of Locksmithing School. It was 3 to 4 month course. I learned a lot of the fundamentals, how to identify key types, learned a lot of different machines. I got a good grasp of what's going on. I'm not saying that's enough, because I feel like a lot of pros would say that's not enough, but you know what? That's what I'm going with, and that's what I'm done. I'm not saying I won't take other classes or other forms of training in the future. Like, I've seen some from American Key Supply that interest me and things like that. Those are also other I've heard are great ways to learn, right? And the third category are those that have only learned from like online training, online classes, YouTube, and and they've done well for themselves, and that's great. That's great. I also learned from YouTube and things like that as another form, right? So there's that. And then then there's a guy that I guess someone made a key from last week, and he paid a good money, because it's not cheap when it happens, but you gotta pay it, right? And he's like, man, this is a lucrative thing, and he just jumps into it, and there's nothing wrong. I mean, there is something wrong that you shouldn't just jump into anything. I mean, I've done that in the past, so I'm not absolved from this. I've jumped into this, and I honestly, I should have come up with a better plan, because I made some mistakes in my own little journey already. I'll go over some of those, right? So I feel those are the four categories in a sense. The pro, the apprentice. I mean, he started as a 2 to 3 year apprentice, and that's probably the best way to go. Cool. Then there's the second category. So I went to a good training course, California Institute of Locksmithing. I learned a lot, and I'm trying to grow from there, and it's cool because I can text my mentors for support and anything like that. Any questions I have, things could go wrong, so that's kind of cool, right? And the third category is people from a line that just online, but I believe Captain Lockpick was one. His YouTube channel isn't active anymore, but he was very successful in that. He did well, and I'm sure he's doing well for himself, and that's another way to go. He said, I think his story was that he couldn't get hired, and because he had no experience, right? And then he's like, whatever, he went on YouTube, and whatever, he did what he had to do, and he hustled, and I don't know how he's doing now or anything like that, but I'm sure he's doing fine. Like, there's that. And then then there's the category 4, the guy jumping in. If you're the guy jumping in, I suggest you go to 3 or 2, before you make any big decisions. So that's my first point. So my next point is, with all your knowledge and with all your training, what services can you offer, right? And once you know that, you can gear whatever budget you have and gear it towards what equipment you need to buy, right? I'm not going to go buying residential stuff, because even though I know how to do it, I'm not going to. Okay, I don't need to go buy the European stuff, because I don't do European, so I'm not gonna buy European. I'm not trained for that yet. I do want to do it in the future, get into that. I've seen some of the classes that American Key Supply offer, and hopefully get into that, UHS and all that, right? And there's some examples of this, right? So this is an M3 job for Tibbet keys. I don't have the Tibbet leash, so I can't even do all keys lost on this, right? So in a sense, this was kind of a waste. It happened. It came from me one time, And because I did not have the Tbilisi, it I couldn't do it. That's it, right? So don't buy everything unless you're prepared to buy all this. Maybe later on, once I knew what I was doing, I could have bought this with a Tbilisi and some Tibi blanks and all that, and then gone from there, right? But I was not prepared for it. It came from an older Jaguar, and the program and procedure looked easy. It would have been easy money if I was prepared for it, but I was not prepared for that service, so I had to turn it down. So there's that. So figure out what you can do. I've heard of you take everything with a grain of salt. I've went into Reddit. I've gone on the forums and all that. I've heard people start from different planes. I've heard someone starting with the duplicator and a CK100. And growing up. But the less you start with, the harder you have to work, and the more you're going to turn down jobs because you're not prepared for them. So there's that. I personally could see myself starting with 5,000 minimum. I wouldn't start with anything less than that, me personally. But you figure out what you have to work with and what you need to start with. So there's that. So with all the training you have, you figured out your budget and you figure out services you're offering. Now do your research on the equipment you're going to buy with that budget. You don't want to waste a single dollar, right? You need to figure out a key machine where you're going to get, like maybe for the auto, just get this one for now, and then you can get other things later on, or a better auto machine later, right? Or, let's see, or key programmers, right? Do your research on key programmers. This is where I made a blunder in the beginning, I decided to make a bet on Teen Ninja Pro. When this one first came out, there was some hype around it, My mentor was telling me how great the predecessor of the Teen Ninja Pro was, and I only heard good things from the Teen Ninja 1000, which is a predecessor. I'm like, man, you know what? If that one's good, surely the Teen Ninja Pro will be good. Nah, total junk. Skinner, one of my viewers, he also agreed with me. It's junk. It's I wish I never put my money on that. I could have pocketed that and maybe just gone for a safer bet like KM100. That was safer than that for sure. If I start again, I would have started with the K100 and the Key2 Max Pro. They both been great. They both served me well. I wouldn't have even considered the Teen Ninja Pro. And I shouldn't have let hype trick me, because it was kind of hyped at the time, and I got tricked in a sense. And well, there's nothing I can do about it now. It's there. I'm hoping with an update, it'll someday become good. I've heard of other programmers that happening, but right now it's not good. That's at least last time I tried it. So I'm hoping it becomes good, and I've heard of other people using it and being good. I don't know about that, but whatever. For me, it couldn't even program a 2011 Toyota Corolla. It gave me all the information on it. How many remotes I had. It couldn't erase the remotes either. I remember this was an issue for this client wanted me to add a remote, but it was talked up on remotes. He wasn't the first user. He only had one remote, but supposedly it already had 4 the limit. So I had to erase them and then add another one for him, And the Teen Ninja Pro could not do a simple task like that. I had my Key2 Max Pro, which is not even advertised as a key programmer, to take care of that, So do your research is important, especially in the beginning. You kind of don't want to waste a single dollar. It sucks, because you might not be profitable for a good minute. I mean, I'm making money, but I haven't really. I'm not where I want to be, and I probably could have managed my money better in the beginning. So there was that. I made some mistakes and I have to live with them. So do your research, So if I were to do it again, I would recommend, do your own research. So again, I'm the beginner locksmith. Remember that. Remember the name. But get an Autel or an Auto Pro Pad, as your main programmer. Then the secondary one, I would still recommend the Key2 Max. I love it. It's the best, the Key2 Max Pro. So that was my next point. My final point is the most important point. Know the law of your area, of your state, county, whatever, different, you have to have a license. What license do you have to have? Things like that, know the law in your area. With each service, do you know the law? Residential lockouts have different laws than auto lockouts, right? With car keys, know the law. It's very, very important. Know the law. You can be charged with a felony for giving your service to the wrong person. So be extra careful and know what you're doing. And this is very serious what we deal with. And my final thoughts are, aside from that, is wherever you are on your journey, beginner, pro, amateur, whatever, right? Can you let us know in the comments how much you've invested yourself in your own, if you start your own business, and just in general, what are your opinions on my video and all that? Anyway, the Beginner Locksmith sign off. Thanks for watching.